Welcome back to the Purple Rain podcast, ladies and gentlemen. The TCU Horned Frogs have got a huge win in Lawrence over number 19, still number 19 by the new AP poll, Kansas Jayhawks. And what a game that was. We're going to get into that game, break down what went wrong, what went right for TCU. And we're also going to talk about this Saturday's monumental game going on in Fort Worth, 2:30 against the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Mike Gundy coming back to Fort Worth, been in the longest tenured head coach in the Big 12, and joined by me, as always, the great Adriana Rojo. Adriana, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm excited I'm ready for football, honestly. I'm ready for Saturday. Can't wait to see how these games turn out, but I'm doing good. I'm ready to get into it.
Now, you're ready to get into it. I'm ready to get into it. Apparently, Oklahoma was not ready to get into it on Saturday because they forgot that they had a big rivalry game going on. And if you've been living under a rock, no worries. OU did not even manage to score a single point in their biggest game of the year. That was embarrassing. It was bad. But man, Quinn Ewers, man, that pro scouting wise, that dude's going to be a top 3 pick in the next couple of years in the NFL draft. That accuracy is spot on. It almost, not quite. It almost makes me scared to face Texas. Not quite, but we're almost there. And how about, I'm not entirely sure. He's Gary Patterson. He's got to know he's being recorded somewhere.
Yeah.
What about him checking in with an assistant, asking what the score for TCU Kansas was post game?
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I mean, too, like you gotta know, like, also just scary. I mean, he's always gonna care about TCU and the program, and he knew how big this game was for them as a program, especially like being on college game day, being undefeated like this early in the season for so long. So it was pretty cool to see him, checking up on the score even after scoring a touchdown on the sidelines at UT. So pretty cool, even though stings a little bit seeing him at UT, and you can definitely see it on the field too with their defense. But yeah, it's pretty cool to know that we still got a special place there, but no
Yeah,
surprise either.
that was it. It was so heartwarming to see him ask that, and really just it felt genuine. Like, and these are still his players that he recruited. These are still the guys that he still has relationship with their families and all that stuff. So it feels good to see all that going on. Going on to the game that we are here to talk about, Kansas TCU. College game day was there. And first off, talking about college game day, we were talking about last episode, who could be the guest speaker from Kansas? Who comes from Kansas? Is there a famous star? Maybe it was, I was joking, maybe it was Joel Embiid. That would have been a nice get, but he's preparing for the NBA start in the next week. So he probably doesn't have the time for that. It ended up being Rob Riggle, movie star, comedian, funny guy, all that stuff. And man, that he was a really good guest picker. He did pick Kansas, and unfortunately, they did not win the game. Pat McAfee, as a really lifelong Colts fan, disappointed me. He went against TCU, picked Kansas, but luckily Desmond Howard was going to go Kansas. Apparently, Max Duggan is a huge human being. He surprised Desmond Howard, and he said, just because of how big I think this guy is, he went TCU, and it was really just a really cool thing to see for Kansas for college game day to be there.
Yeah, I mean, it was a good show for them too. I think they had their most viewers that they've had all season. It was up 22% on viewership from the same week, week 6 last year, comparatively too. So I know ESPN's PR put out some numbers about how high the viewership was for, this episode, which is really cool to see. Just goes to show, like highlighting different colleges, like in football, like how much people care about that and want to see that. And, this was definitely a unique matchup. I feel like a lot of times it usually is, SEC teams or matchups. So this was definitely cool. Cool episode for sure. And it was a lot of hype. A lot of students there showed up, and I saw plenty of TCU flags and TCU signs that were pretty funny too. So that was cool to see as well, to see some fans traveling to Lawrence for the game.
Definitely, most definitely, most definitely. And I think it was just really special for their student body. You know how crazy they get for college basketball. You know they can show up, you know they can show out, you know they can be loud. And man, on Thursday, Friday, whenever y'all were listening to the last podcast, I sort of gave this team a little too much credit about being in the environments, the crazy environments. It looked like Kansas kind of rattled them a little bit offensively, defensively. Game really started out slow, and then it was just a tale of two halves. The first half really slow, defense is winning, and then apparently the defense coordinators were sent home, and they just said, you know what, first person of 50 wins, and nobody got to 50. But like Coach P used to say, just win by one. TCU ended up winning. What I want to get into here real quick, Adriana, just honing on the defense. We'll get to the special Max Duggan, Quentin Johnston, all that stuff here in a little bit. But talking about the defense, okay, this game gave me a little bit cause for concern because for one, in a big game, there was literally, and we haven't seen it. I've harped on it how improved it's been, but the tackling was really bad in this game. It was really, really bad in this game. So many times where you could have kept Kansas in front of the six. You didn't secure a tackle. They ended up getting a lot of yak yards after catch. They ended up getting a lot of that, and it extended drives, kept our defense on the field. And there were so many busted coverages. I just was puzzled by how open these guys were. I mean, Grimm in the back of the end zone to get to, I believe it was 24 points. How was he that wide open? How? There was nobody close to him. And the up tempo, the mobility of being the backup quarterback who came in, this defense just looked lost. They looked lost, and it looked like legit one of those games, whoever had the ball last was going to win the game. So real quick, I just want to get your quick thoughts on what this defense, is there a concern that you want to specify, that you want to highlight coming out of this Saturday's game?
Honestly, I would say one of my biggest things was blown coverages. You kind of touched on it a little bit, but I know when I was watching the game, that was something that I noticed just because, of course, they had the backup quarterback in there. So on a few instances, we got lucky that he, overthrew his receivers. But if he would have, hit the targets, they were wide open. And so a few instances, we got so lucky because it easily, there was two or three easily 20 yards. I know there was one for sure automatic touchdown, and it wasn't good defense, and it was just pure luck that he missed the guys. So that would be my biggest thing. And this upcoming week, OSU, like, you're not going to get that lucky. Like, Spencer Sanders is, jumping ahead a little, but he's an experienced quarterback, and you're not going to get that lucky with him. And it's funny too because I think in my prediction too, I had said 31 points, which is what they got. But I know in that too, I was kind of unfortunately predicting that there may be a breakdown just because of a little bit of the inexperience of, this defense, and maybe like the environment and kind of all of the factors in that. So I think it's just a little bit too of a shock factor. But I think once they kind of get more comfortable with that, it'll change. But the blown coverages is probably my biggest standout kind of worry that I saw.
Yeah, one quick interesting fact here. In one half with Jalen Daniels as the quarterback, TCU defense allowed 3 points in one half of Jalen Daniels as the quarterback. They allowed 28 with Bean as the quarterback. So take that what you will. It was completely a tale of two halves. Jalen Daniels getting hurt on that last drive to go to halftime. They got a field goal. TCU was really in control of the entire game, and then you come out in the third quarter, and it just completely flips. And I was kind of curious of that. I had no idea who Bean was. I had no idea who he was, so I didn't know what the defense was going to face in the second half. Obviously, you've gone all week preparing for Jalen Daniels, and you could tell the defense honed in. The defense was executing their plan for Daniels. But once that went away, and a quarterback who, dare I say, knew how to work the pocket a little bit better, he torched TCU. He torched them. I'm not taking away what Daniels is as a quarterback, but it looked to me that Bean had a better awareness and feel for the pocket for when it ever collapsed. He knew when to run. He knew when to extend a play, and he was just really rock solid all second half of the game. Both teams scoring 21 points in the third quarter, and he really had TCU confused because, again, this is a quarterback whose tendencies you did not plan for. He is a quarterback that you had no idea what he could do. He hasn't seen any action all season. It's been Jalen Daniels, Jalen Daniels, Jalen Daniels. And I feel like that's really what did it for TCU. The reason why I think it's a negative thing, because in college football, things can shift, things can turn very differently. And you have to be able to adapt in that circumstance. They did have halftime to prepare possibly for Bean. But again, Gillespie not being in the Big 12, this is his first year. He has no homework on who Kansas players are. And it's tough. It's a tough thing. He was a really solid quarterback in Texas, Bean was. So coverages being blown. Again, I've said it. It's been a little bit of a concern for me all season. Is the pass rush going to be what causes TCU to lose a game? And there was just, I mean, Bean just had all day to throw in the pocket. There was no disruption. Even when Gillespie will send a blitz, sometimes I felt like it would be at the wrong time. But I think Gillespie did get a little bit better as the second half went on, because he got punched in the face in the third quarter, allowing 21 points. And then in the fourth quarter, you force a turnover, force a punt. You're able to, let Kansas make those mistakes, and you capitalized on them. Gave your offense the ball back. They marched right down the field and got a touchdown. And you did your job as a defensive coordinator and as a defense. But the way that they were confused in the second half was just not good. The game was still a game. It was 10-3, and you gave all the momentum back to Kansas. All the momentum was riding on there, and you were able to take it back. Jamoy Hodge getting an interception, and you were able to make a couple big plays. Abe Kamara, he may get lost here and there, but Adriana, he will knock you out. Really, I think this dude is possibly the best tackler on the team. But again, my biggest problem on Saturday was the tackling was abysmal. It was poor.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And one last note too, besides tackling, because yeah, that was definitely an issue, is that this is the second week in a row that we've had a different quarterback than probably the team planned and prepared for. So I think going forward, TCU has something, and this is nothing new. It's nothing, eye opening. Oh, we need to prepare for more than, the main quarterback, the starting quarterback. But, this is the second week in a row that it's happened. And so I think just evaluating what else, this defense needs to look at and needs to be prepared for, and probably going, even further in the scouting report to look for those things. Cause like you said, Bean hadn't had any snaps, and we didn't have any film or anything on him. So just something to look at going forward, because this is the second week in a row that that's happened to us. So definitely something to get easily frazzled by, because you do a lot of extensive work in planning and preparing for that. So definitely a big shift that we need to look out for.
Yeah, this is a big stretch TCU is entering into. Kansas, Oklahoma State, and then Kansas State right after that. Kansas State is looking really good. They're ranked in the AP poll now. Again, how much does the AP poll matter? Maybe not a lot, really, because it's all about the college football playoff rankings. When you get 12 delusional minds together and they, make their mark on college football. But shifting gears here, going to the offense, Adriana, it was about damn time we got Mr. Johnston involved. It was about damn time. Finally, the man was not getting tackled or dragged down running a route. Finally, 14 catches, 206 yards, a touchdown. He was definitely the talk of the town all week here in Temple, Texas, where I live, where he grew up, where he played football, where he became a 4-star athlete, wide receiver, and where he ended up committing to TCU. This dude was a star. He dominated the front page of the Temple Daily Telegram. He was there. He was the face of it, and he was the face of TCU on Saturday. This man was unstoppable. It was clear that Garrett Riley, offensive coordinator, wanted to get Johnston involved early and often. And damn, man, 3 receptions on the first drive. On the first drive, I'm immediately thinking, hey, he's got to catch up to all the times he didn't catch the ball. He didn't get targets. So good. This needs to be the makeup game for all that stuff he missed out on. 14 catches. And Adriana, I don't want to harp too long. I don't want to hold the talking stick too long. I want to let you get in on some of this cake that we're eating right now, the Quentin Johnston special recipe we're having here. What did you see from Quentin Johnston? And not getting too far down the line, but I had some people that I know texting me, maybe wide receiver 1 come April.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, this isn't out of nowhere. He's definitely always like been that guy, but I think we've just been waiting this season. It's funny because the last, few episodes we've been like, oh, when is he going to get involved? When is he going to get involved? But also he hasn't had as much of the opportunity to, just because of the coverages that have been on him, and how aggressive they've been, because they know what kind of a player and athlete that he is. But I think, seeing what he was able to do in this Kansas game, I think a big portion of it is too is like we were able to see the work that he's done, not only this offseason, but also the new routes and looks that they have for him to get open. Because I think, we know that the same scouting that TCU is doing is the same ones that the other teams are doing, and they know what kind of a player that he is. But there's definitely not a lot of new looks for him, and just his ability to be that guy for TCU, especially when they need it, that experience and that kind of reliance on him in such a big game like this one, was just so needed. I think too, in the past games, we've kind of been incorporating some of the newer receivers, the younger guys, and kind of slowly integrating everybody, which has been great. But just knowing that you still got, Quentin Johnston, he's still always going to do his thing and, be there and be able to get open and make these ridiculously insane athletic catches, was just really great to see. But yeah, this game was so exciting, especially because we've been waiting all season for this. I feel like every week we've been like, oh, this wasn't it. This wasn't it. But yeah, he's averaging 14.7 yards, a catch, like you said, 206 yards. But even just, I think his ability not only to get open, but also to find the ball as well was really, really great, and something that I think we just really missed seeing for sure.
Yeah, it was pretty easy to tell what the game plan was going into the game. Like I said, 3 receptions on the first drive. And Quentin Johnston, obviously, if you have 14 catches, 206 yards, and a touchdown, clearly one of those plays is going to be the play of the game. There was one play of the game that I thought actually kind of did it for TCU on Saturday, what really led them to get a win. And it has nothing to do with the second half where the offense went off for 7 scores. To me, when you're clearly struggling, the game is a struggle, you're feeling each other out. Kansas is showing up on defense. They're showing up. You get a stop at the 1-yard line. The field, you have 99 yards in front of you, right? 99 yards, 1st and 10. It's the field position battle. Can you get a few yards to give your punter some room to get a big punt off? But Mr. Johnson had other plans. A catch went for 54 yards, and that ended up being a touchdown. 6 plays, 99 yards, a touchdown to go up 10 to 3. That drive, in my opinion, was the most important drive of the game. I do understand if people want to go to obviously the game winning one. That was special. That was great. But 6 play, 99 yards in 6 plays. That is ridiculous. There, Allen can't even do that. Alito can't even do that. Like 6, Alabama can't even do that. 6 plays, 99 yards. The big one being for 54 that Quentin Johnston had. In my opinion, that was the play. That was the play, the drive of the game, whichever one you want to go with. So I really loved what it was. It was maybe a little bit concerning that everybody else had 1 and 2 catches, but what the hell? When you're giving the ball, force feeding the ball to your number 1 receiver, I don't give a damn. Okay. I really don't. Okay. Everybody else had 1 or 2 catches. Okay. It was your day off. Great. Today was Mr. Johnson's day. You be ready to show up next week, the rest of the guys. So go have fun in the arcade. Y'all picked up a big win. Y'all didn't have to do much. Show up Saturday. It's another story of the game. Another part was the run game, right? I think the offensive line for much of the season has really improved in the run game. On Saturday, they kind of met their match a little bit. Kansas was really sound. I thought in the first half they were winning the line of scrimmage on defense, not allowing TCU to do what it wants to do a little bit, get a little bit of run game going to set up the pass. That's really what Sonny Dykes likes to do, especially if you go back to those SMU days. Go back like it was a long time ago. It was just like 8 months ago. If you go back to that, they want to run the ball. They want to get the ball out in the middle of the field and then throw it right over your head. That's what they wanted to do. To Kansas's credit, man, I didn't think, maybe was it just some momentum they caught? Kansas is legit. That defense is legit. Kobe Bryant on the outside, that their top corner, he is legit. I'm not saying like a first round pick legit. I think he has talent to get to the NFL legit. So they really did a solid job in the first half, winning the line of scrimmage. Kendre Miller, his stat line, 19 carries, 88 yards, clearly showing he's the lead back. And I love getting him carries. I love getting him the ball. Our best running back, really talented. Even when Zach Evans was here, he was showing talent. So, in all, going to Max Duggan, Adriana, he really showed up. He had his first interception, which really personally, I don't count. It was end of half. You lobbed it up,
Yeah.
trying to get a defensive pass interference. I mean, all season when you throw it down deep to Quentin Johnston, it's a defensive pass interference. So why not chunk that mother effer and see if we can get another one, get a field goal before halftime, right? And then it ended up being an interception. I don't count that. It was an end of half interception. Try to get a big play. It was an interception. I don't count it. So, but in all, that pass, that game-winning touchdown pass, right in the breadbasket where only Quentin Johnston can get it. Max Duggan showed up in this game.
Yeah, it's just really cool to see him be reliable week after week after week. And I think too, like looking at his stat line, 308 yards, averaging 9.3 yards pass. Obviously, the 1 interception, but like we said, wouldn't really knock him too much for that. I don't know that, yeah, we'd necessarily count that. 23 for 33 on completions, but yeah, he just played great. And I think too, like he's getting more comfortable with these receivers, and we're seeing that on the field. I think a few times, we're kind of threading the needle on some of these passes, and I think the connection between him and his receivers is just getting a lot better. And hopefully, that continues as the season goes on. But uh, just kind of seeing him, being more comfortable in this position and progress even further and continue to be like reliable as that team leader has been really cool. And I think that, going forward, this OSU game is definitely going to be a good test for him. But this Kansas game already was, a huge test, especially with all the hype and everything. And that, like we said, that Kansas defense also was obviously not letting us get very far, especially in the first half. So not even letting that frazzle them too much and coming out in the second half and still being able to, throw the deep ball and all of that, even after the interception. Because I think too sometimes a lot of that can be a little bit of a mental thing after you haven't after you haven't thrown an interception for so long. It
Yeah.
can kind of get in your head, and you kind of have to have like a little bit of a short memory with that and kind of let it go and keep going forward. And it didn't, he didn't let it affect him at all. So that was great. But definitely be interesting to see what Saturday looks like. But honestly, no big complaints. And like the interception was just, I just can't knock him at all for that either. So
Yeah.
it's a pretty cool game.
Simple lob up. And again, like I said earlier, anytime you throw it downfield to Quentin Johnson, it ends up in a defensive pass interference. So I don't blame him making that throw. But what I really loved in this game is that for the first time in Max Duggan's career, we saw him step up and stay composed and accurate in a big game. A big game. Most of the time, he's second guessing himself, maybe not trusting in his mechanics, trusting in his throw, trusting in his arm. We haven't seen that too much. On Saturday, I think it was a huge step, not only for TCU ceiling for this offense and what they want to try and do in terms of, getting to Arlington and, if they want to go bigger, be in that conversation for that top 4. I think it was a huge step. And especially for Duggan personally, if he wants to make it to the NFL, this was, in my opinion, the biggest game of his life. Because, when you play Tarleton, when you play Oklahoma, and you're clearly the underdog, you're clearly not as talented, you're clearly struggling to win those games and win games, period. For this one to have expectations on your shoulders, to be the favorite walking in, college game day is there. The stadium is sold out. You are the game on Fox, 11 a.m. You are the game. Everybody's watching you. He stepped up and made throw after throw after throw, mainly obviously to Quentin Johnston after time after time and after time. But again, what about Tay Barber? What about that touchdown? That throw, I think that throw might have been even better than the Quentin Johnston one. He put it right between 2 defenders, Adriana. He put it right there. And for, I don't know what they coach at Kansas, but if the DB gets his head around, at worst, it's a deflection. But the throw is right where it needs to be. Tay Barber makes the play. Touchdown. He made the throws necessary, which if you told me that coming into the season, I wouldn't have believed you. I wouldn't have. Hell, he wasn't even the starter. And now I think it's safe to say that Chandler Morris probably might not see him again. But Max Duggan, obviously knowing his story, playing the way he has been this year, this offense is clearly elevating his play. It's instilled confidence in himself, in his arm, in all of his mechanics. He's not second guessing a lot anymore, which is what we saw. And I really enjoy it. The job that Sonny Dykes has done, Garrett Riley has done. And then obviously Quentin Johnson staying through all of this, a rebuild, maybe it is still a rebuild, but it's one successful rebuild so far in 2022. And so that was for Saturday. We got to get into another big game, which hopefully has another career game from Max Duggan. Big one. Adriana, it's already sold out. We are here on Wednesday, recording on Wednesday. You guys are listening on Thursday, Friday, hopefully pregame on Saturday. It is sold out in Fort Worth. So hopefully, I get it. If you're a parent, you got baseball, your kids in baseball, soccer, pee-wee football, basketball, whatever the case may be, you ain't going to the game. You sit down. We going to Fort Worth. We going to the Carter, right? No time for you. After the game, we can go get some reps and we can go play pickup at the park or something, whatever the case may be, right? Oklahoma State's going to be a top 15 matchup. Number 8, Oklahoma State coming to Fort Worth to face on number 13, TCU. We're going to break this game down for you guys. And real quick, if you're not already, if you're listening on YouTube, watching on YouTube rather, make sure you give this video a like, thumbs up, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. And make sure you are also following on Spotify as well if you're listening to the audio. This game, Adriana, real quick, just as a student, I want to get a student's point of view who is there on campus. Is there a real buzz around campus, around TCU athletics in general, not to mention TCU soccer, number 10 in the nation, by the way?
Yeah, I would say that there's definitely a buzz, a lot of excitement. It's funny too because even just I think game day being, in Lawrence, which like obviously like I'm a huge game day fan, like I always watch it like with my family and stuff, but just hearing students talk about like, oh my gosh, they're gonna be, at the TCU game day, like just hearing people talk about that alone, I think and all of these events around the football game is building excitement. And it's like these things are happening, like ESPN is going. And I think just all of these little things are making people more and more excited about it. And then obviously, the team's doing great, like they're undefeated, but there definitely is a buzz on campus. It definitely started, 2 weeks ago, the OU game, just the energy on campus was definitely really different than I've ever felt. They always do the band walkthrough Friday afternoon, and the band, is playing and walks through campus. And, that's always cool. But even with that, I just feel like the energy around TCU football is so different, and there's so much more excitement and awareness of like what's happening with them and the players. And I think a lot of it too is, they got so much excitement and hype around Sonny Dykes even coming. Like they freaking flew him in on like a helicopter. And so I think just them doing all of these things to make people not only aware of the program, but like kind of building specific connections with individuals has been building that hype. They do like, I think Sonny Dykes did like a coffee thing, like free coffee to thank students for coming to a game. And so, there were so many students at like, the coffee on campus, and he was there signing autographs and taking pictures with people. And so, just all of these small things to build connections with students, I think is making them feel like they have more of like a vested interest in the football program and really athletics in general, but especially football. But there's definitely a big excitement, and I mean, yeah, most people always go to the games, but I feel like in general, like it's very have to go. We're ranked. This is a big deal. Did you guys see the AP polls? And just, of course, too, I feel like a lot of it is not something that people don't keep up with, but it's not something that they would like regularly check. And it's like, where do you guys think TCU is going to be? Like we just beat Kansas, but what does that mean for our ranking and stuff? So just hearing that around campus is really cool. And just definitely something different that we haven't really had, at least recently or since I've been here. So yeah, definitely a big buzz around it, and it'll be cool to see. Can't believe it's already sold out, so that'll be awesome.
I'm assuming you will be there, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so walk me through usual pregame. Last year, coming into this year, obviously, you would get there how long before kickoff?
I feel like I'm not a good gauge of this in general, just because I like to get there like really early to get a good seat. So I usually get there like maybe like an hour and a half or 2 hours early. I don't know. But I also don't mind just like hanging out like at the stadium and stuff. There's like good vibes there. But then this year I definitely had to like get there earlier because you get there not like that much earlier, but yeah, there are a ton more students when you get there, especially in the student section. I feel like um it's one of those things where people are much more concerned where they're sitting and if they'll be able to see. And all of these factors and stuff. But yeah, I usually would get there pretty early. But definitely gonna have to try harder this year because it's been packed. So
So you might have to sneak into the stadium and just camp out at your spot. Just take a pillow, take a blanket, sneak into the stadium, and then just fall asleep there. And then at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're sitting there and you're ready.
well, guys, like I've been here, so
Right.
I don't know about y'all. Y'all are slacking.
Right. You got to step your game up, right? And I even remember talking last year, after, the coach Patterson got fired. I remember you telling me how you had to beg and urge your friends to go to the game. Okay, do you have to do that this time?
Oh no, everyone will be there. Yeah. It's funny too because sometimes like with going to games and stuff, it'll be like, "Oh, does anyone have any like extra tickets?" And it's like this year there is no asking of extra tickets or anything. There are no extra tickets.
Nope. That's awesome, and I think it's really, again, to the culture that Sonny Dykes has brought to TCU, their marketing team, obviously, and a real big hype around this program has been what the marketing team has been able to do. More access to these guys. I mean, I'm pretty sure majority of the student body didn't even know who the hell the offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator was. All they knew was just Gary Patterson. Now you know the entire coaching staff, you know the recruiters, you know who the social media managers are, you know everything about this program, and the access to fans, students, everything is top notch. And I agree, like you said, Sonny Dykes getting in front of the students, having a connection with them. I think that's what you should be doing, right? If you want people to invest in your program, shouldn't you invest into them? I think it goes a little bit hand in hand.
Yeah.
I'm 24 years old. I'm not that much older than sophomores at TCU. I'm not that much older. I know how we think. Like, sometimes you do, if I'm going to invest into you, hey, what are you going to do for me, right? Maybe free coffee goes a long way for people with 8 a.m.s, right? And maybe it goes a long way. But that's always a solid thing. That culture around TCU is just changing. That's great. What's also great is about to be this breakdown here for you guys. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Oklahoma State going to be rolling in 2:30 kickoff. I don't know who the heck is going to be the commentators. Hoping it's going to be Fowler and Kirkstreet, but something between scheduling 11 o'clock when game day ends, and then I don't think it's going to be them. But regardless, all right, Spencer Sanders, who has improved as a quarterback over the years. Oklahoma State obviously was in the Big 12 championship last year, kind of threw away a chance to get into the college football playoff and really just made it easy for Cincinnati to get in. I thought if even if Cincinnati won, right? Even if they ran the table, got undefeated, and beat Houston in the championship game, if Oklahoma State would have beat Baylor, in my opinion, I thought Oklahoma State would have got in before Cincinnati. And I would have loved to see that for the Big 12, for Oklahoma State. But for some reason, you want to run wide at the 1 yard line. For whatever
Yeah.
reason, I have no
And to
idea.
see them beat Baylor.
And to see them beat Baylor, right? And they squandered that opportunity. So,
Yeah.
uh, so they're coming in. Their defense has taken a little bit of a hit. Defensive coordinator Jim Knowles was poached at Ohio State, and they say they don't play defense in the Big 12, but yet Ohio State had to go to the Big 12 to find their defensive coordinator. Hey, their words, not mine. But Oklahoma State lost some talent. Obviously, their star linebacker Malcolm Rodriguez in Detroit now, playing well for the Lions. They're coming in with some new faces on defense, but also their defense is not playing up to what really their calling card was last year as a team. You had the offense, you had Spencer Sanders, but it was always about Oklahoma State's defense. That's what they were known for. That's what, when you went to man, what the heck is the name of their state? When you went to Oklahoma State, you knew last year we about to play a tough defense. Their defense this year, though, has taken a little bit of a hit. Not too much, but by college football standards, they took a hit. They're allowing 24 points a game. Okay, let me see if I can get all this here in one shot. Right. Uh, yeah. Yards allowed, they have 304. Rushing yards allowed, they have 118. I am certainly a fan of that if I think Kendre Miller is going to have a big day. So their defense a little bit, talking about TCU's offense against their defense here. Went back and watched Texas Tech, watched some Central Michigan, watched some Baylor. And I think this is, what 38-31 was for TCU in Kansas. Adriana, I think this might be a low scoring game, honestly. This might be that good old, everybody's expecting in the Big 12, oh, they're going to get in the 50s. Defense isn't going to show up. I think defense is going to show up on Saturday for both teams. I think it is. I think both offenses are riding high. Spencer Sanders is riding high. Max Duggan is riding high. And you got two really sound coaches who kind of know what they want to do. And a big thing that I do want to highlight, and I'll get into it when we talk about the other side, but the offensive line, in my opinion, if TCU wants to come out with a win, get a huge win in front of their home crowd, sellout crowd, the offensive line has to win this day. They have to do what they did in Kansas. Give Max Duggan time. You saw when they didn't give him time in Kansas. His name is escaping me, but number 47, 2 sacks on Max Duggan. When you don't allow him to have time in the pocket, the drive goes nowhere. But if you do your job, give him time, open up some lanes for Kendre Miller and company, you see what this offense can be. Max Duggan just needs 2 seconds, 3 seconds, maybe even 4. This offensive line has to win the day. I will trust that this offense will continue. And I think it was actually a good thing that Quentin Johnson went off the way he did, because now it alerts that Oklahoma State defensive coordinator. Now it alerts him, well, he was started out slow, but now they're making it a point of emphasis in their game plan to get number 1 going. So now I have to revert my attention to Johnston. Now that frees up Savion Williams. Now that frees up Tay Barber. Now that frees up Darius Davis, who, in my opinion, should be getting about 15 looks a game, whether if it's in the run game, jet sweep, receiving game, you name it, he should be getting 15 touches a game. This is going to be big. For me, Adriana, the offensive line has to be what wins the game for TCU.
Yeah, I think for me, looking at this game, I mean, it's funny just looking at the team stats comparatively, because I think one of the things that we talked about is it's almost like looking in a mirror, points per game, both teams average 46.4 points, both of them. Points allowed, as you mentioned, OSU averages 24.8 and TCU allows 1 point less at 23.8. And then yards allowed, pretty similar. OSU does allow like 20 more yards. Total yards, just all of these things. Passing yards are basically the same. All of these things are so similar. But I will say the one thing that stands out to me is that TCU does have much more of an established run game. And I think that OSU's defense, though, is better at stopping the run. So I think that if TCU wants to win this game, I think that one of the biggest things that they'll have to do is make sure that they're able to establish the run game early and just make sure they have that versatility, because if they don't, I mean, that's a huge part of their offense. Obviously, Max Duggan's been doing a great job of getting the passing game going, but it really is, a good versatile mix between the two. And so I think, that's going to be one of the biggest things is TCU is going to have to establish that run game really early on, and make sure that, they're not able to stop it. But just looking at the two, it's just, really crazy how similar that they are. And then the other thing that stands out to me is, I know on the flip side, OSU relies so much on their passing. And so our defenders, cornerbacks are going to be have to, work really hard to stop that. I know I touched on it a little bit earlier, but Spencer Sanders, he's a really experienced quarterback. As you mentioned, went to the Big 12 championship last year. So I will say that is the one thing that concerns me is having some of these cornerbacks and making sure that the coverage isn't blown. Because, like we mentioned, like he will hit the guys and they will score. So on that side of the ball, like that's probably my biggest concern for OSU on what they need to do successfully to get going and what TCU's defense needs to stop. And then TCU on offense definitely needs to get their run game going. But I don't know. Honestly, as far as like total points, I know you mentioned that you thought it'd be a lower scoring game. Just looking at like their averages makes me feel that it'll be higher. And because of, the caliber of both of these quarterbacks, um, looking at past OSU scores, they've had some really high scoring games, 58, 63, and then, a few lower ish, 34, 36, 41. Um, so once they get going, they really amp it up. But then again, the Kansas game started off really, really slow and we thought it was going to go that direction too. So this one's a little bit harder for me, but I do think there are some flaws, that we've talked about in OSU, and I don't think that they, obviously they're undefeated, but I do think that they may not be as good as their ranking portrays. I may regret saying that on the podcast because I'm a big like, you know, jinx person. I'll knock on some
Ooh,
wood, but um, that's just what I'll say. I don't know. They bumped them up pretty high. They're at what, 8 you said?
yeah.
I just personal.
They've retracted a little bit. I think they were at 6, but then AP pushes Michigan, Clemson, and all that. They pushed those guys. I think it was because Clemson beat NC State though. They were like number 16, so they got a top 16 win and bumped Clemson ahead. So, yeah. Uh, Clearly Adriana not pulling any punches here early on. But I sort of agree in a way. That was the offense for me. Now switching to the defense, here's an interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people are talking about. I think TCU defense might have an advantage because Joseph Gillespie was the defensive coordinator for Tulsa. Tulsa played Oklahoma State how many times in the last decade? Joe Gillespie knows what Mike Gundy's offense is. Yeah, some offensive coordinators has changed, but Mike Gundy's system remains the same. It was the same with Mason Rudolph. It's the same with Spencer Sanders. It was the same with Brandon Weeden. It's the same now. I think that's something that Joseph Gillespie can take back, because if you go back to those games, Tulsa's defense always gave Oklahoma State some problems. Always gave them some problems. Now the talent is elevated, corner, safety, defensive line, and now you're talking linebackers, who is the strength of that defense. I really love our linebacking group. I think this is a game where if they can make it happen, I think the TCU defense is going to have to force a couple turnovers. Maybe disguise some coverages the way you have in the past with Tulsa. But now you have better players to do them with. So maybe you can even throw some new stuff at them that maybe you couldn't do at Tulsa. The biggest thing, and as you said, Adriana, you're completely right. Jalen Daniels missing passes, Bean missing passes. Spencer Sanders is, does he have the greatest arm? No. Does he have an NFL arm? I don't think so. But 70%, 80% of the quarterback position is between the ears. It's all about how you see the field. And Spencer Sanders sees everything on the field. Like you said, he's not going to miss that wheel route. He's not going to miss that seam throw, because I know which play you're talking about. Kansas would have had a walk-in touchdown if Bean would have saw him. That's a throw Spencer Sanders will see. That is a read Spencer Sanders will see pre-snap. He is very intelligent pre-snap, but some of the limitations on his arm kind of prevent him from making some plays, though he's still a really good player, really good quarterback. So what I'm trying to say is that the TCU defense is definitely Joe Gillespie and company are going to have to bring their game. Whatever game plan you have ready, it better be the best one you've drawn up against Oklahoma State in the past. Got to be the best one. The linebackers in this game have to be better. Tackling has to be better. I thought, again, like I said earlier in the show, missed tackles from D. Winters, Johnny Hodges, Jamoy Hodge, Marcel Brooks, missed tackles from these guys, Bud Clark, Abe Kamara, just missed tackles led to chunk yardage plays from Kansas. I think this week, we're already midweek, right? We're already midweek in preparation. I wonder and I hope that tackling was a little bit more of an emphasis on practice this week for these guys on defense, because you're going to need to tackle and wrap up. To your point about Oklahoma State's run game, looking at the stat sheet here a little bit, Robertson, 89 carries for 355 yards. It's solid. That's a solid stat line. But I'm going to read off Kendre Miller's, okay? He is at 69 carries, 474 yards. Robertson, 89 carries, 355. Kendre Miller, 69, 474. Kendre Miller is doing more with less. As where Oklahoma State, you have to do more. What am I trying to say here? Quality over quantity. TCU's back is quality over quantity. Oklahoma State's is quantity over quality. How many carries do you need to get to a specific yardage? Quality. What is the quality of yardage that you're getting when you get carries? That's the biggest thing. For TCU, the linebackers are going to be the biggest thing, in my opinion. Stop this run and force Spencer Sanders. Having guys like Justice Hill in the backfield, having some guys who go to the NFL on the offensive line are one thing. You can rely on that run game when Spencer Sanders isn't going. But this game, the run defense, these linebackers are going to have to be on their P's and Q's, Adriana. They're going to have to. D. Winters over here being labeled as a top 70 player in this year's draft. He's got to show it on Saturday. He's got to bring it. These big games, you expect your leaders to step up. It gets talked about every broadcast. Every broadcast, it gets talked about. Joseph Gillespie challenges the defense. Who is the alpha male on this defense? D. Winters steps up. You're talking to him. It gets talked about every broadcast. The alpha male has to step up on this game, and it's gonna have to be in the run defense, personally, for me.
I think, oh man, what would you say going into predictions? What would you say if you had to hit a number?
You got to put me first, huh? Okay. Predictions, man. For this game Saturday, I'm gonna roll with Oklahoma State on this game. I still need to see Sonny Dykes come through at the Power 5 level. Still got to see him do that. He's flamed out a couple times. Obviously, with SMU, when you get into some bigger games, when they went down to Cincinnati, they were undefeated and they just get crushed. They face UCF, they lose, and I got to see a little bit more from a Sonny Dykes team in some of these big games. And the defense just left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth on Saturday. And then Mike Gundy. A Mike Gundy football team is always going to be ready to play. They're always going to be ready to play, especially after the ass kicking TCU got from Oklahoma State last year. What was the final score? Like 65-14 or something like that? Like I'm over here getting choked up. It's ridiculous. Like it's ridiculous. I think this team remembers that, honestly, and I wouldn't be surprised if Joseph Gillespie kind of threw it in their face a little bit. Look, y'all got y'all's ass whooped. Y'all allowed 63 points. No wonder the pass regime had to leave. That, if you're being blunt, if you want to challenge them, I think I'm gonna go with a little bit of my head versus my heart. My heart is obviously bursting purple, but I think a Mike Gundy team coming in, big expectations, fell short of the Big 12 title. You right that wrong in Waco, beating Baylor, but that's just not it. That's just not enough. Got to get back to Arlington, and I think you got to beat TCU to get there. So I'm going to go with Oklahoma State. I'm going to go with them 20-13.
Dang. Okay, that was much lower scoring than I thought you would go. Um, ooh, I would say for me, like I said, I'm probably going to go higher scoring just because of the average points per game and seeing, historically, like how powerful both of these offensives have been
Mm-hmm.
this season so far. Oof, this one's hard. And then I didn't get to watch, a whole lot of the Oklahoma State Tech game just because I feel like, that's the most obviously that's the most recent game and I feel like but I did see that they were kind of matching each other score for score. Still not quite sure how good Tech is just because they like beat Texas, but then they lose to anyway, we won't get into that.
Yeah, I
But
think they were facing like their third string quarterback.
yeah, but just in general, I don't know how much to go off of that, but I think just looking at that score and seeing how close that game was in general kind of changed my view of prediction on this game. So I think I'm going to go TCU 37 and Oklahoma State 34, which for my blood pressure's sake, I really hope the score like difference is much different and it does not come to 3 points or anywhere close to that just because that is really scary. But
So I'm
37
guessing
34.
37-34 is Adriana's score prediction. I'm assuming there's no Sunny Dykes coffee this week, is there?
I hope there is.
To calm those nerves, I would imagine so. I would imagine so. Kind of take advantage of that a little bit, although TCU dining might not like that too much. But hey, you know what? But oh yeah, 2013. Hey, I was way off with my prediction for Kansas. I said 41-17, and it was 38-31. Hey
I
man,
said
who knows if
48
Jalen
31.
Daniels is still in the game? Maybe it is 41-17. You know, we held him to 3 points. We had him to 0 points when he was in the game. So hey, you win some, you lose some, you get some right, you get some wrong, you're way off, and then you're way on. It's the nature of the business. So anything you got before we get out of here, Adriana?
If you're a student, go to the game. I mean, you're probably already going to the game, but if you're thinking about it, definitely go. But it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm excited and a little nervous, but it's going to be fun. Sold out crowd and uh, definitely a lot of eyes on this game. So
Okay.
I'm pumped.
Oh yeah. So you know how like there's like shuttles around the university, like at Pascal High School. There's a shuttle right there because it's sitting right there next to the stadium. I think those homeowners next to the stadium gonna be making a lot of money. You know how they let people park
Yeah,
on their lawn and
hard.
everything. They gonna be
No,
making that
sure.
in one day. They gonna make their mortgage payment in one day. They gonna make, and that is a beautiful thing to have if you are in that position. And those are great people right there. By the way, I've gone to a couple of games. I've parked at a couple of those houses, and I can't even imagine how filled those streets are going to be in that neighborhood right next to Amon G. Carter Stadium on Saturday, 2:30. Everybody, like Adriana said, be at the game. If you're not on the game, take a tablet with you. You are a college student. I know you have a MacBook, an iPad, or a tablet. Get on some Wi-Fi and be outside of the stadium watching the game and yelling and making this place crazy for the Pokes coming to town. So other than that, she is Adriana. I am Michael Pevia. Once again, make sure you are subscribed to the Purple Rain podcast on Spotify or YouTube, wherever you are watching this. And we will see you back next week, hopefully talking about a TCU win and a Oklahoma State loss. Other than that, we'll see you guys next week. Take care.